Oh my god, it's episode 2. Welcome back to the Weekly Wigs, guys. We made it. We made it to week 2. Who'd have thought it? I am here with fresh episodes for you. We're coming in weekly. We're smashing these episodes out. And let me tell you, the experience of recording the first episode, my inaugural pod episode, was actually so fun. It was nerve-wracking. It was kind of scary. It was all of the things. I was feeling all of the emotions, but I could not be more thrilled to be sat back here, rocking and rolling for Ep 2. This is like a really exciting chapter of life right now, and I'm so glad and so appreciative of anyone so far that has dropped a follow. I'm pre-recording this before I've uploaded and published the first episode, so we're gonna manifest and hope that a bunch of you downloaded the first episode and you all bloody loved it. So we're going to keep that energy going. Because I am pre-recording, we're doing a couple of sort of themed topic episodes right now. But anyway, that aside, what I'm actually going to talk about today, and is kind of the theme of today's episode, and I did touch on it and sort of allude to it in my first episode, is sort of the lifespan of university. And I guess I'll delve into just my experiences of my uni life, good and bad, and everything in between. Oh, side note tangent, just before I even get started, I just have to share, I am cracking up today, right? I have seen some sights in my time, okay? And I live in a block of flats, okay? I love apartment living. I live on a higher floor, get a great view across the city. But inevitably, you also get views of your neighbours. Today, tell me what, because I work from home. This is like my entire office and world. Tell me why I peek out the window. One of the neighbours, she's just walking around in her flat, bare ass naked. As in, like, she's wearing a jumper and just her entire bottom half just whoop out for the world to see. I was like, girl, that's some confidence right there. Could not be me. I mean, hey, I like a bit of privacy, but I was a bit startled and I thought, oh, okay, we're doing that today. So that did make me giggle today. Anyway, enough of the tangents, enough of bare asses. Let's dive into uni life. So I was talking a little bit in episode 1 just about like my journey in life so far and the experiences going through school and kind of the path that you take in life. So when I was 17, 18 and I was doing sixth form, which is sort of your final stage of, high school education, this is where you're essentially making decisions on, okay, what do I want to pursue next? Do I want to just go into the working world? Am I going to try and just get a normal job? Do I want to go to drama school? Do I want to go to college? Like, what do I want to do? And to be perfectly honest, like most teenagers, I haven't got a sardine clue. I don't even have a clue really now as a grown adult. I don't think any of us do. But naturally, schools obviously try and guide you to certain paths, right? And for my school, I do think the biggest encouragement was for you to go to uni. There wasn't really any other conversations on the table. I know some people did leave to go to college like a few years earlier, if they perhaps wanted to focus on something more vocational or do like engineering or be a painter and this kind of stuff. But I think for the majority of young kids, you just kind of go with what you think the flow is. And that's certainly what I did. And all I knew at that point in life is that I really enjoyed media. It was one of my top subjects in school. It was, quite frankly, one of the only subjects I really enjoyed going to. Aside from history, actually, I did really enjoy history. But I really excelled in media and I got good grades and I was like, yeah, this is my bag. So naturally, when it came to discussions around, should we go to uni? All my friends, everyone at the time, everyone's just naturally picking a course of what they want to do. So I went down the path of looking for some sort of media production course, right? And I'm not going to lie, the options were actually kind of slim. I did get a little bit screwed over by my school, not to slag them off, sorry, but I had a really weird, final last year in my school because a lot of my subjects changed. Turns out I wasn't going to get as many A-levels as I thought I was going to get in order to get into university. Because in order to obviously go to university, you need certain grades and certain A-levels. Like, at a minimum, you usually need, 2 A-levels, usually, a pass grade, like B or C. And that is generally how they accept you. But we had a bit of a drama typically on my media course. I was so stressed out because I was absolutely gunning on getting a top mark in that, and that was going to send me soaring. And so as you do throughout the school year, you sort of tend to start off doing a bit of coursework, and then you move on to the exam element. But long story short, we had like a whole scenario where we just didn't have a teacher for the final few months of our study because the teacher was having a baby and it came like early, and the school just didn't source like a decent alternative. So I like passed my coursework with flying colours, like A star, thank God I did, and I got a high mark on it. But then come to the exam, not a single one of us in my class had any exam preparation. We all went into the exam blind, like totally blind, and obviously we all basically failed it. But it's only because I had a high score in my coursework that took me over the finish line, and I ended up getting like a B as my final grade, right? But let me tell you, it was like twitchy bums. Like, I was like, girl, if I don't get this at least a B, I'm not going to university. So it was kind of stressful. It was slim pickings. You had to do all the UCAS application forms. And I remember that being quite a stressful time. And my intended university was a university called, well, back then it was called the University of Glamorgan. It's now called the University of South Wales. And they have a campus in Cardiff. And I was going to do media production there. But they like rejected me, basically. They said, no, sorry, you haven't got an offer. So I was like, damn. So then I did a bit of searching, ended up finding a similar course in Derby. I didn't have a clue where Derby was, never been there in my life. Up until this point in life, other than going on like holidays with families and like one girl's trip with the girls, I hadn't exactly travelled the UK or done all that much in terms of actually staying away by myself. It had always been in just like family settings. I don't even think I was thinking of anything location-wise when I was picking a uni. All I kept thinking was, well, I just want to take somewhere that accepts me at this point. And so Derby just ended up being the fit. Or so I thought. So I'm a fresh, young-faced 18-year-old. We've secured the spot at Derby University to do media production. I had exciting prospects for it because I was advertised by the university that it was going to be a pretty practical course, which was really up my street. One thing that I was never a massive fan of all throughout the school was sort of like theory elements of learning. I feel like I've always been so much better at like hands-on, creating, doing. And that was the appeal of the course, is that it was supposedly meant to be like 80% practical course and like 20% theory. So I think I had a bit of shock when I got to my first year. I go away to Derby, and do you know what? At first, I actually really embraced the entire experience. It was like terrifying, and I can remember my first day so clearly, like moving up there, mum and dad taking me and packing all the boxes. And it's like so nerve-wracking, but obviously you meet all your little flatmates because you live in university halls, and everyone just goes out and gets drunk, and that's kind of the rest of it, isn't it? And so I think this adrenaline kept me going for quite a few weeks. I was like, yeah, I'm independent, I've got loads of new friends, look at me, I'm going to parties, I'm getting drunk fresh this week, yeah. Like, you think that's just the most important stuff, don't you? And then basically what happened was we had a hard hit down to reality. I think all the adrenaline that had been fueling me for so long just halted. It was a complete halt. And all of a sudden, kind of the cracks started to appear. As we do as young people, we just mask everything with drinking and partying. And I think I really got stuck into that hole. And you're so naive and young at that age. Like, you have to remember, 18 years old, you're still a teen. Like, 18, you're still a teenager. You think you're such a real-life adult at that point, and you're really not. I'm living off of a student loan and, like, my parents supporting me with extra cash. I don't have a job at that point. All I care about is just getting drunk every week. That's, like, all you actually care about. You go to lectures because you have to, but none of us wanted to. It was like, oh, don't worry, first year, you don't really have to do it anyway. You can pass really easily. And then, there comes a point where the partying slows down a little bit. You start to realise, oh, I've actually got to do like loads of assessments and I have to go and attend all these lectures that I don't want to go to. And I just had a real harsh reality of, oh, no, this is like really happening now. You got to like wise up. And to be honest, I was having a lot of struggles. I think I'd been in denial for so long, I started to realise all the things that I'd probably been suppressing for a long time were all rising to the surface. And some of those things for me were probably just very normal stresses that most first-year young students deal with. But because we're all surrounded by inexperienced young people, none of us know how to help each other out. But I think you get so trapped into this bubble of like all you know and care about in that moment is all the partying that you're doing and just all your new friends. You think that you are in this complete family and that's all who matters. And I just got really sucked into that. I was like, these people are going to be my friends for life. We're soulmates. Like, I was so invested in these people. And to be honest, I think that's just part of my character. Like, I've always worn my heart on my sleeve and just give myself entirely to people, which I think is a positive trait. But sometimes you have to just reel it in a little bit and realize that, like, everyone's got boundaries. You have to look after yourself too. Like, that matters as well. And I just let that go to the wayside. Like, I was not taking care of myself, drinking into oblivion, as most young students do, eating crap. Oh my God, we were probably just eating pot noodles. We went to McDonald's all the time. We used to take like 3 a.m. trips to the 24-hour Asda and just buy crap. Crap, pot noodles, McDonald's, and alcohol. That was literally the shopping list. And it's just like, you're having poor sleep, your schedule's all over the place, because lecture times were actually always quite antisocial for me. Like, I would have days where I actually wouldn't have anything in the day, and then I'd have to go to one random lecture at like 8 in the evening. And I'd just be like, what is my schedule? Like, I have no idea what's going on. So it was just, a complete whirlwind. Like, you have no real schedule. You're not looking after yourself. I didn't really know who to go to if I did need help. I think, to be honest, I was in denial that I even needed assistance or help. I was probably so stubborn that I just thought, it's fine, everything's fine. I got my girls, I got my flatmates, everything's just fine and dandy. And we're not even going to address any potential issues. We're just going to keep drowning in our sorrows if we do feel any. And we're going to get drunk until there's no tomorrow. And obviously, that's not a sensible way to live. And you soon learn, oh, this is going to bite you in the bum. And that it did. So I feel I'm talking about this all kind of like jovial and jokey, obviously. And I probably should preface this with a bit of a trigger warning about all things mental health, because I will get a bit serious for a second, because basically what happened from that point onwards is when the dust all came settling down, I think I just started to feel really isolated. And I wasn't communicating any of those feelings with anyone in my life, including my family, who are obviously far away at this point, and at that point in life are truly the only real, solid core support system that I have. And I don't know if I was just embarrassed or whether I felt ashamed, but I don't think I wanted to burden them. I just thought, oh, they might think like I'm immature and I can't look after myself. And I don't know, you feel such like pride, don't you, when you're becoming an adult and you think, yeah, I can conquer the world, I don't need any help. When the truth is that I probably did. So essentially, it all just kind of spiraled from that point onwards. I started to really struggle with my mental health, like on a level that I'd never experienced in my life before. And I think that was making it even more harder to deal with, because up until that point in life, I was such a happy-go-lucky person. I mean, I still am, but I was really just unbothered in life about so many things. I mean, yeah, you go through like trials and tribulations as a teenager. Yes, I got bullied in school. Like, obviously those things bothered me, X, Y, and Z, right? But if I was to think of it in the grander picture, I always felt like those were quite menial things. I never went through any major traumas as a child. I was very lucky and fortunate in my upbringing. And I think in some senses, I probably was just so in my own little bubble from the world and any trials and tribulations and challenges that you can obviously face as an adult, that when it did hit me in terms of struggling with mental health, I clearly did not know how to deal with it. I mean, in hindsight, it's easy for me to look back at this now and be like, oh, of course. But, in the moment, you're just trying your best to plod along and just exist. And I don't think, truthfully, at the time I even understood what was going on. I probably couldn't have even identified it as mental health problems back then. It was just kind of this survival mode and this sort of whirlwind of feelings of being up and down and not being honest with myself or the people around me, and just also having really unhealthy boundaries with the people that I was with. Like, I was sort of saying, I thought these people were my family. I thought they were my lifeline. So whenever things were bad, I just used to kind of go crying to them, which probably, in hindsight was not the healthiest thing, because we're all unstable 18-year-olds at this point. We're all drinking and having our own things going on. And what I should have been doing really is seeking support in like the grown adults. So a big part of my mental health struggles, which did kind of come out of nowhere, which again, trigger warning, self-harm. But I basically just, I still kind of struggle to put into words how this even came about to this day, because it kind of baffles me how I fell into that loop. But I think a lot of my problems were rooted in just anger. I felt so angry all the time with the world. I was clearly probably feeling sorry for myself. I was mad at my course because the course that I'd signed up for was supposed to be really practical, and it turns out it wasn't. And I think I was really struggling with that. I was definitely probably struggling with being far away from home and homesickness, and wasn't able to identify that at the time. And I think I was probably just feeling general isolation, which is probably very common, for young people moving away from home for the first time. And it's also like your first experience of having to sort of be a semi-adult and like pay certain bills, even though you still don't have to work for it necessarily. And I think with all the drinking and all the heavy binge drinking, which you naturally do as a student, it was just, my brain was swirling. It was not in a happy place. And I was such an angry individual. And just for some reason, one day, all that anger just came out in the form of self-harm. And then that just sort of unlocked a whole new spiral within me that I didn't know existed. And we were battling a lot of demons and a lot of dark thoughts and feelings. And again, just being so young and naive and just not understanding what any of this was. And, bear in mind, you've got to think, this was a time where actually mental health, it was nowhere near as discussed as it is these days. So months and months are going on of this behaviour. I'm just metaphorically putting a band-aid over it and just pretending like nothing's wrong, everything's fine and dandy, when meanwhile I'm clearly really struggling. I did attempt at one point to go through counselling through my university. I think that was kind of forced on me slightly by, maybe it was a flatmate or one of the assistants at the halls, because I'd had a meltdown over something. And I think there was definitely attempts there, but the services, it didn't do clearly what I needed to do at that time. And I was probably just so rejecting of any help. I feel like this is the type of thing that you can't really ever understand unless you've been through it yourself. But it's very self-destructive behaviour. Like, you're just not yourself in those moments. It's like anyone that's ever experienced any form of depression or anxiety, it's sort of a common phrase to say it feels like there's just a cloud over your head all the time. And you can't really explain it unless you felt it. But I think I was just in this self-destruct mode at all times. I wasn't really caring about the help that was there for me. And I just couldn't snap out of it. And basically what ended up snapping me out of it was the lowest point. It was rock bottom, where I actually was at a point where I tried to end my life. And it was a really kind of dark moment in my life. It was sort of this drunken mistake, just a bit of a messy moment in time. I won't go specifically to all those details, but that was basically where I reached in my first year of uni. And I was just whoa. After that happened, and I thankfully survived, I had a moment to myself where I was whoa, I jolted out. It's like I had an out-of-body experience of just jolting out of this body and person that had been existing for the last few months that I just didn't know. I was this person on my right was whoa girl, what's going on? And then the person on my left, it's like the devil and angel on the shoulder, And it was just a crazy time, and obviously a very traumatic time. And, I look back at that now, what are we 10 plus years later? And I don't even recognize that version of myself. I sometimes find it crazy to even think about that time in my life, because it was such a blip, truthfully. It all happened actually in really quick succession. But then the great news is that I did bounce back in quick succession too. So that leads us on, after my long ramble, sorry. We're now going into year 2. So I had that really traumatic first year. Really didn't enjoy my time. Huge mental health crisis. Thought my life was literally over. And thankfully, got better. And I was at a place then where I was able to open up more to my family, share what was going on, and kind of try and heal and move forward from that. And as part of that healing process, I just knew that I needed to be closer to home. I didn't enjoy Derby. I was in a toxic environment. I wasn't really getting on with the people I was living with. People didn't want to live with me, which was a really hard thing to take. And I was just so isolated there. I was like, nah, girl, we need to fix this shit ASAP. So thankfully, that is where the radio degree came in. Ironically, in the very university that I first applied for. How weird is it to think that, like, none of this would have happened if I'd been accepted into that uni the first time round, you know? Anyway, how life goes. So I do a transfer request to join the University of Glamorgan as a second-year student. I switched the course at the time. I don't think they actually had media production specifically as an available option to me, but I spotted that they had radio and I thought, hey, I could do that shit. And actually, of the time I did spend in Derby in my first year, we did do some radio as a module, and I remember enjoying that so much out of everything I did there. So it just kind of clicked. I thought, you know what, let's go for that. Thankfully, in a miraculous turnaround, I actually don't know how I did this, considering the amount of trauma I was going through in my first year, but I actually managed to pass my first year. I know theoretically the threshold is not really that high for first year passes. Maybe it's different now, but it wasn't when I was back in uni. But I basically managed to secure all my passes that I needed to secure the spot in second year. Did a very informal interview with the course leader at the uni. And then before I knew it, I was gearing up for Chapter 2, Year 2, Cardiff Life. So Cardiff Life, what a time we had. I really enjoyed my second and third year. I am so glad I made that change. And I will say, it just kind of goes to show that if something doesn't feel right and it's not going well, just know as a uni student, you can change that path. And you know what? For some people, that's leaving uni and that's okay too. I think there's a lot of shame around that, which shouldn't exist. At the end of the day, you have to try these things in life to know if it's for you or not. But I'm really thankful that year 2 and year 3 ended up being so much better. And I actually just had a great time on that course. I excelled. I did really well in my course. I got really good feedback from my tutors. I got my award for the student of the year, which I was thrilled about. And I got a 2-1 and she bagged her degree and it was good old times. But I did have some funny times, some funny memories in Cardiff. I was kind of apprehensive because I was actually going back to halls, which is usually not the path that most students follow. What tends to happen is your first year, you go straight to halls. It's shared living, you get to know people. And then sort of second and third year is often where you sort of make your friends in first year. And then maybe some of you decide to go live in a house together or a student house or whatever. But because I was starting fresh again with all new people, I kind of had to do the halls thing all over again. And I was a little bit apprehensive because I thought, oh, I'm a second year, I'm going to be living with all these freshers. They're going to think I'm well old. Turns out it was the total opposite. I lived with the most mild freshers I've ever lived in my life. I was like, girlies, where's the party? What's going on? My flat, good old flat 1301, fond memories of it. We turned into the party flat of freshers somehow. Don't ask me why. I'm going to probably attribute that to my friend Amber. Shout out Amber. Amber was my first friend in halls. We lived together in a flat of girls. Out of all sort of the flatmates that we all lived with, me and her were just the ones that glued together and said, hey, should we go introduce ourselves to people on the floor or what? Because we lived in a block of flats, so there was multiple flats on the same floor. So we thought, yeah, we'll do a little invite and we'll take our little bottle of Strongbow or whatever alcohol we had at the time. And we'll go knock doors and go, hi, we're 1301. Do you want to come over for some pre-drinks? And the rest was history. But yeah, student life, man, honest to God, the things you get up to as students, it doesn't even feel like a real existence. It is weird. It's you're trying to study. You're supposed to just be astute little students and I'm going to get my degree. But I guess so much of it is made up of social life and just drinking and making friends. I will say, if I'm being honest, truthfully speaking, the degree element of university, I really haven't benefited from it all that much. I truly believe that I could have made it perfectly fine in a working world without a university degree. But for one thing it did give me was just invaluable life experience. And whilst I went through obviously a really tricky time at first and struggled a lot, I'm so glad I persevered because it just gave me a new sense of independence, a new understanding of what it's like trying to be an adult, living with other people, the first time having like real flatmates and real housemates, and dealing with potential struggles of like having to share space with each other that isn't obviously just your family home. So that element of university was something that I was always really grateful for, and I think truly is like the selling point of it. Because I can't imagine actually what I'm trying to think of like an opposite experience, I guess, for somebody that wouldn't have gone to university. Like, I guess for most of those people, they would have had to have stayed living with their parents for much longer, I assume, whilst probably working real life jobs and trying to save money to get out. But that must be quite a difficult spot to be in when you know that maybe most of your mates from school are all at uni, all out partying, quote unquote independent living, and you're still at home with your parents. Like, it would be interesting actually to know the thoughts of someone who didn't go to uni and what that experience felt like. So if you're listening and you're one of those people, please do let me know in any of the comment boxes. Because I've never known, no one in my circle or in my life, like in my immediate friend group, like never didn't go to university, if that makes sense. So it would be really interesting to know like the opposite side of the coin. So yeah, let me know in the comments on that one. Second year in uni for me was also an interesting time where I had to start juggling a part-time job. Again, was obviously very reliant on student loans and any support from my mum and dad, which I was very grateful for. But I think my accommodation actually cost a little bit more when I moved to Cardiff. So my mum and dad, in fairness, they instilled in me quite early, they're like, hey, if you want to have a social life and you want to do things with your life, you're going to have to get a job, hen, because we're not bankrolling you the entire time. And that was kind of instilled in me from a young age anyway, even when I got like my first retail job at 16, like working in the summer. So I was like, okay, girlies, you know, I would like a social life. I don't want to keep having to rely on getting all my pocket money essentially from mum and dad. And now I'm like 19, so come on, let's grow up. So then she entered the world of hospitality, nightclubs. Oh my God. Oh, again, not for the weak, not for the weak. What an experience. Truly, what an experience. Me and my flatmate Liam, shout out Liam. I feel like I'm shouting out Liam in every episode so far. But we ended up working together, which was actually kind of great because obviously we lived in the same building. We were obviously often on the same shift. So it was kind of nice to have like a little beddy and we could like walk to and from work. Because actually, low key, that was so unsafe. Like, I was just like a young little 19-year-old girl, like sometimes finishing shifts at like 4 or 5 in the morning, having to walk back to my flat on my own, which, albeit, you know, it was only like 5 minutes around the corner, but still kind of, you know, women's safety, not so much. But yeah, a time was had. I will say, if I think I was sort of chatting in the last episode about jobs I've done and different industries and retail and all that kind of stuff. And I'll probably say it was like a touch above retail. I think retail is truly my least favourite industry I've ever worked in. Hospitality nightclub was probably second to that, but there was an element of working for that nightclub. I won't call them out just in case someone comes to me, but there was sort of like this familial energy to it, probably because it's like you're a young person, you're still going out to clubs, so you're familiar with the environment. There's a bit more of like a squad feeling to it. You're all kind of young age. It was easier to get on with people. You'd have like after work drinks. That was like your perk, is like if you stayed on till end, like, yeah, you can stay behind and have like a free drink at the bar. You know, that feels appealing when you're a young person. You're like, yeah, cool, vibes. Sometimes you might actually like see your mates on a night out in the club, stuff like that. So there was definitely parts of it that I didn't completely hate, but it was just tiring more than anything because, you know, it's just very antisocial hours. Like, you're having to go through an entire day of uni and do your lectures and shit. And then, you know, my start of my shift time would have been something like 10 p.m., 9, 10 p.m. And my main responsibility used to be a flyerer. I was that person going, hey, £1 shots tonight, guys. Here's a slip for you to get £2 off entry. Come to us. Come to our club. Have a great night. Oh, God, the amount of people that just... Oh, I have so much respect now. Whenever I'm on a high street, and you know you see people handing out flyers for whatever, I will always take your flyer, okay? And look, I might not do anything with it, and I'll probably put it in the bin, but I will acknowledge you and I will thank you, because it actually is such a soulless experience when you just stood on a street and everyone walks past you, and quite frankly, people give you disgusting look. People hate you. And I get it, okay, because it's like, feels a bit harassy, but man, I mean, I was never like, thankfully, I don't have any memories of being like fully abused or anything like that. No one like screamed at me or shouted at me, but you just feel the vibes. You just feel the bad energy from people. But you know what? On the other hand, you do also just chat to so many hilarious drunk random people. That job was a people job. Oh my God. You're just interacting with the public. Literally, you're promoting the club. You're out and about on the streets. You are a street promoter. It was an interesting time. I think one of my worst shifts on recollection was a rugby day shift in Cardiff. Oh, and if anyone's not from Cardiff and doesn't really understand the law, like Cardiff and Wales, big rugby nation, okay? We got the Wales international rugby team. It's a big deal in Wales, okay? And Cardiff being the capital of Wales, the home of the Millennium Stadium, or now known as the Principality Stadium. Like, these match days are big. Like, we're talking like 75,000 people in a stadium. You know, it's a lot of people on the street. So you were always pretty much forced to work on a match day, which is a Saturday. Get those punters into your club. And my job for the majority of my shift was to stand on St. Mary Street, which is like the main high street with all the bars and clubs, with just a large sign saying, "Come to the club." And it was piercing it down with rain. I was sad. I remember feeling like such a loser. And my dad, who was going to the match on one of those days, he saw me. He came along and saw me on my shift, which was a nice little boost. But after he went, I just felt so embarrassed. I was like, oh, this is so sad. I feel like such a loser. I'm just stood here with a sign going, come on. Oh, in my little branded club coat, getting soaked. Me all the while just thinking, I just want to be in the match. Like, why do I have to be working this job? I hate it. And my feet would kill. Oh, I'd be stood for like 12 hours with like 1 hour break in between. It was brutal. I literally used to just sneak off and go find like a bench on the high street so I could just have a sit down because my feet would hurt so much. And then I think actually truly the worst element of that job was occasionally they would ask if you wanted to stay on a couple hours in the nightclub after you did your flyer in. I'm going to be real. Most times I was like, no, sorry, gotta go, bye. Because I was so not interested. But on the occasions where I felt obliged, like I had to because I hadn't volunteered in a while to do it, I had to do kept collecting. Oh, nice. Sticky, sweaty floors, dance floors, cups, plastic, beer spilled everywhere. And you're like a snake. You're having to slither through the crowds of punters. And I was stacking up the cups. Up they go, like as many as the eye can see. And then you're trying to keep it steady and make your way to the bit. Oh, and it's just back and forth. People are savages. They just throw their cups on the floor. And this nightclub that I worked in had a reputation for being a very it was like an underground club. So it was sweaty and dark. I used to come home from shifts and just I feel filthy. My pores are sweat. Like, you know, you got the smell of beer and nightclub and cigarettes and the whole thing was grim. It was character building, that's for sure. They also used to make me do daytime flyering, which was the worst. I think that, no, sorry, I realise everything I'm listing is that was the worst thing. Sorry, I'm just clearly reliving my traumas of having to work in a nightclub. Do you know what? Sorry, before I actually rant about my daytime flyering, do you know what task I actually really quite enjoyed doing, which I never got to do, and I only got assigned it like twice, was being the cloakroom attendant. That was in the lists of things that there were to do in that job. That was like the echelons. That was like, hey, you get to perch on a seat for a couple hours. You don't have to be stood on your feet all night long. Everyone's really nice and friendly to you because they're obviously just coming to collect their coats and they've had a fab night. And you just took your little token and then you collect their coat. And have a great night, guys. That was a fabulous time, and I wish I could have done that more. I was loving being the cloakroom attendant. You were inside, in the warm and the dry. Not... Because, girl, I was doing this flying outside in the depths of winter with a little brolly in Wales where it rains all the time. Anyway, I digress. So the daytime flying, however, that was a real ball ache. Because it's kind of like, it's bad enough that you have to do all this shit in the night time, but you accept it because it's like, it's your night shift. the club's active, whatever. But I really resented having to do daytime flyering because it just felt like such a waste of time. You'd have to go to where like the student union was and you would just hand out flyers like, come to this club tonight, see you tonight, see you tonight. Use this flyer for like £1 off your entry. And no one was taking the flyers. Come on. No one cares. People are just like going up to their lectures. They're not paying attention to you. And even if they did take the flyer, the likelihood of them bringing that in the evening was next to none. Because when do students ever care or remember about those things? So I'm not going to lie. It got to points where I was like, I had to theoretically stay there for about 2-3 hours. And I used to just loiter around for an hour, give a few of them out. And then I would like stick a bunch of them on the wall and on the signs nearby. And then I would just dump the rest of them in the bin and go home. I'm paying myself for such a poor employee. I did work hard, I promise. But that was a step too far for me, especially in the heights of winter. And you're on your own as well. And I was like, this is really boring and pointless. And I don't see the point in it. So bye. So yeah, juggling part-time jobs when you're a student, I will say, like, credit to all students who do that because it is hard. Like, it is quite a hard adjustment going into uni life when you actually start doing all the studying and the assessments and you're just trying to get used to a bit of a schedule of your life. Like, a lot of people find that really hard to adapt to, and I definitely did it first. So when you're trying to do that and manage a part-time job on the side, which actually for most students is like an antisocial hour job, like a nightclub, like retail or a restaurant or something, like it takes up a lot of your time. But I guess as young, spry people, we have the energy that keeps us going, and we're all just fueled by like energy drinks and Monster cans at that point. Those are like my real core memories of my second year, other than obviously bouncing back, adapting to a new university, meeting new people again. I was still very much like mentally healing on the side. There was a lot of that going on too. But I was trying my best to like embrace it, have fun. I was still young. I still wanted to go out and drink and party at that time. And obviously I needed to have a job and all this kind of stuff. So it fueled a bit of a social life with everything that was going on. Third year for me was much more intense in terms of the actual course. I actually ended up having to stop my part-time job because it was just impossible to stay awake and stay alive doing that whilst doing a final year study. It was very intense. The workload was way more, understandably, because it's your final year. This is the point that matters, you know. But I think that transition from the first few years to then was quite a challenge mentally to just get your work done. Like it was quite demanding. I definitely had a few wobbles here and there. My mental health was getting a bit better, but I started to experience panic attacks a little bit at that time. And I think that was just honestly related to probably stress and still learning how to deal with that. As still a young person at the end of the day, I was only like 20 years old. So it was like a bit iffy here and there, but I was still doing well. Like I was doing all my work. And then thankfully we made it to the end and we got that damn degree. And so this brings me on to like my final story time. This is like a post-university little story time. I reached the end of third year. And obviously, when you reach the end of your university journey, you are then thinking, okay, what are we doing next? What's the plan? I've been very used to this regimented university life, but I'm about to go to real adult life. And what am I going to do next? You obviously think in the back of your head, yeah, I'll just like pursue something in what I'm doing. It'll be fine. But as we know, as I mentioned in the first episode, graduate life is not quite straightforward. Trying to actually get a job in the profession that you want to is actually really hard. And I will say, I think that's another thing that universities need to do a little bit better at mentally preparing people for, because they do have a bit of a way of glossing everything to be like, yeah, everything's going to work out great. You just got to do this and do it this way, and then you'll get a job. It'll be great. And then they send you off on your merry way. You go to your graduation ceremony, and then it's like, oh, what do we do now? Like, what do we actually do now? It all kind of goes to the wayside. So my grand plan, as a lot of people do this when they finish uni, because they've just spent a lot of years studying and working, all the rest of it. People want a bit of leisure, a bit of a break, a bit of fun before they enter the adult world, okay? So travelling, gap years, a lot of people do that. And my grand plan was Camp America. Man, I can't even recall what inspired me to want to do it. I never had some big grand dreams of that from a young age. I probably saw it on Instagram once and thought, oh, that might be fun. I've been on holidays to America before and I enjoy going to America. Yeah, let's just have a summer in America and apparently you get to work there too. That'll be cool. and I guess part of me was thinking, yeah, that'll be I guess great experience on the CV. It'll be an adventure. And I can recall, right, so in third year in university, we had this whole project where we were making a radio show and a TV show, and we collaborated with the other course that were doing the TV production part. And quite often you would partake in interviews to help each other with each other's work, right? And so they invited me on for this segment, and it was all about my plans to go to Camp America. And at this time, I was just so keen. I was like, yeah, so this is my plan, and I'm going to go to America. And actually, the role I've been assigned there is to run a radio station for the kids, and it's going to be super fun. And I'm going to be a radio DJ, and I'm finally putting my degree to use, and I'm so excited. Oh, God, I was still so naive and so full of dreams and hopes and wishes, thinking, this is the life for me. And then I just had another shock reality. I feel like that's the running theme of my life. Is oh, reality check. I think I was feeling on cloud nine because it's I'd been through all that trauma of year one, and I'm still to this day, I think one of my proudest achievements and something that I'm so chuffed that I did was get that degree. That is a really hard thing to overcome, and I went through some really dark times in first year. And to think that I got through second and third year doing a brand new chapter of new people, a new university again, and then just smashing the degree and then getting my little award that I got at the end of the year, which was Student of the Year. I could not have been prouder. Proud as punch. And so I think I had this real wave of excitement and enthusiasm behind me of let's keep the ball rolling. I can achieve anything. I think I just got a bit ahead of myself, thinking it was just going to be a fun little holiday. And then I failed to realise that, oh, actually, no, this is a very different environment. And it is a job too, so Camp America life was not for me. But I didn't learn this until I got there. God, I went through so many weeks of preparation for this. It was a big deal. I'm so cringed out now at the thought of how much I used to go on about I'm going to Camp America and I'm doing this interview with my uni about it and I'm telling all my friends about it. And God bless my mum. She did a little farewell party that coincided with what was going to be my 21st birthday whilst I was in America. We had American flags in the house, American themed plates. Oh, God, I cringe now thinking about that. But it was a great time. It was a great party, I will say. And so I go off on my merry way. I'm going to go into some detail now about my travel there and basically what happened in basically the span of a week, because that's how long she lasted. I set off to London Heathrow. And this was, bear in mind, this was my first time flying solo. And, big flight too, a long haul flight. I was going to Boston and I was going to be staying in a hostel in Boston for one night. And then I was getting picked up at Boston Airport. And then the camp itself was in a state called Maine. I'd never heard anything about Maine in my life before. I didn't even research it. Didn't do nothing. I just thought, oh, it's a summer camp. It's kind of close to New York. And do you know what it is? All I could ever think about when I was planning this entire thing, my only real priority is that I wanted to go to New York after the camp was over and then maybe back to Boston. Because there was basically going to be an opportunity that once you did 3 months in this camp, there was a period of time where you could travel maybe across America before going back to the UK. And I think, honestly, most of this was fueled by that and that alone. I think I was very in denial at the fact that I was going to have to do a job for 3 months. In the middle of nowhere. And it really was the middle of nowhere. It was beautiful. It is exactly what you could imagine. You know the film Camp Rock, the Disney Camp Rock film with Demi Lovato and the Jonas Brothers? Just go if you've never seen it, just Google reference it. It was just like that. It was like the film set. All the little log cabin, wood cabin things, a lake, trees everywhere. It was really giving camp life. And bear in mind, I am someone in this life who doesn't even like camping. I've never liked camping. I've never grown up with it. I don't like it now, and I probably never will. I'm a bit more of a bougie bitch, okay? She likes a hotel. She likes a swimming pool. I like being by the beach or in the city. But why I thought that I was going to fit into this environment, I don't know. So I set off to London Heathrow to get on my flight. It's actually a miracle that I even made that flight because, again, who is she? I'm so inexperienced at this point in life. I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. I've never gone on a flight on my own. I've always relied on mum and dad to sort everything out. And honest to God, thank God I met this gal who I don't think she was at my camp. I think she was at another camp. I don't know. I found her online on some group and we knew we were going to be on the same flight. So met this gal. I think she was like maybe from Newcastle. I can't remember her name, but we got chatting. We were in Terminal 5 in Heathrow. I was obviously loving life, so excited. I've always loved long-haul flights anyway, a big fan of that. I was paying no attention to the board or our flight details. We were sat in a restaurant having food, and thank God she checked, because she was like, "Oh, girl, our flight's boarding." I said, "What?" We ran to the gate. Thank God we made it on. Anyway, get to Boston. We go to this hostel, and that was my first time going to a hostel. I think even that was a culture shock to me. I was like, what do you mean I'm sharing a room with all these strangers who I've never met? I couldn't get on board with it. I'm not a hostel girly, probably never will be. But that took me for surprise, and I was meant to meet this other gal who was coming on a later flight. I think she was from Manchester, if I think back now. I was so jet lagged. I started to feel really ill on my arrival, and I think that's when it kind of immediately started hitting me. Even before I got to the camp, I was like, oh no, what have I done? I was quite scared in those moments. I was excited to be in America, and it was like, whoa, I made it. I went on the flight, la la la. But I think when I entered that hostel room and was just in an environment that I just didn't feel comfortable in, and I was all alone, I was like, oh my God, what have I done? What am I doing? And I don't think I've ever been one who's massive on sharing space with lots of people. I'm always a big fan of my own space and my own room. So it really put me off. And I guess in my mind, I'm already thinking, but I've just signed up and that's what my life's going to be for 3 months. And I'm going to be sharing this big log cabin with not only other adults, but children, screaming children. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks in that moment. And I was like, what have I done? But, in my positive Polly manner, I thought, come on, girl, we haven't even got there yet. It'll be fine. And so I just kept pushing and pushing. Next morning, I wake up. I'm so jet lagged. I don't know what's going on. I meet the gal from Manchester. We have a little chat. We go down for breakfast. And then we ended up having a right palaver. We had to basically go from the centre of Boston back to the airport, which is where the camp was picking us up. We'd ordered taxis to pick us up from the hotel. There was a group of us. Happy days. And then, I'm trying to recall the details, but something basically went down where the taxis didn't turn up. It was a tight time schedule. And we ended up having to bear in mind, we had big suitcases. Obviously, we're going to live there for 3 months, so there's a lot of stuff in the suitcases. We were so worried about time and our pickup slot that we just ended up having to leg it across the city with these suitcases. 5 girls. I've never met these girls before in my life. None of us know where we're going. I actually think this was the era of not even really having Google Maps. I genuinely do not know how we got there. I certainly had no clue where the hell to go. I think I just followed along. There must have been one of the other girls who just knew where to go, or maybe we did have Google Maps, I can't remember, but I just followed along in a complete haste and a rush, shitting myself, thinking, oh God, what if we don't make it? What if we're going to miss the bus? And then we're stranded in Boston, what are we going to do? And we're all stressing out, so dramatic. I'm so tired as well. I'm so ill and jet lagged, and it's early morning. Oh, having to lug a massive suit. I'm just I'm just a girl. I don't want to do this. We finally make it to some central bus station, which I think then connects to a metro station. We had to get on some metro to the airport. We get to the airport, and then we had to go make our way to some giant car park at the airport to meet the minibus. I'm then greeted by the tiniest minibus I've ever seen in my life. In my head, I thought it was going to be a nice, comfortable coach. Because bear in mind, we had quite a long drive. Boston to Maine was probably at least a 4-hour drive. And this minibus it was like one of those little vans. It wasn't even a bus. It was like a mini van that maybe sat like 8 people. And oh God, it was squishy. It was uncomfortable. And I was thinking, oh, we're all going to be cozied up in here for the next 4 hours. Yay! But you know, you go with emotions, you chit-chatting with all these girls, because it was a girls' camp. This is what the place I was going to was a girls-only camp and girls-only staff too. So there's a lot of girly pops. We're all chatting, getting to know each other. And you know, that was probably like a fun part of it that was keeping me going during that time. And then we get there and it's like an orientation evening. You do all the introductions. And I remember this orientation evening was like a bit of ice-breaking games with like some of the other camp counselors, as we were called. And these are just all young girls, just like me, of a similar age, like all in their 20s or whatever. Some of them a little bit younger, some a little bit older. And actually, a lot of them international. So it wasn't just UK people there. There was people from Canada, America. And I think I just remember having the shock of my life culturally when we were doing this like icebreaker game. I can't even remember what the game was, but it was just a fun little game. And something about Americans, they're very competitive, Americans are, and they're very loud compared to British people and British culture, I feel. And I just remember there was like these girls. I felt like I was in a movie. It was giving like high school cheerleader, nasty bitch vibes. I'm sure they were lovely people, but there was just something that I read in that scenario that I felt like I was in like a high school movie. And these are like the stereotypical nasty cheerleader girls that pick on you, and they were really competitive and being like kind of mean, and they were being a bit over the top in my opinion, and like kind of having a go at people if they didn't do something right. And I was like, oh my God, girlies, like I flew in yesterday. I thought we were just playing like an icebreaker. What the hell? And I just remember that really that like deep sinking in feeling at that moment of like, oh no, I don't think these are my people. I just don't think this is the environment for me right now. I think I've misread this one majorly. But again, we persevere. We keep positive. We keep pushing forward. So we sort of get settled in. You have some food. They gave us like a pizza night on the first night. And at this point, there's no kids there. So it's meant to be like an orientation week or a week or two before the kids arrive. Give you a bit of time to settle in, yada, yada, yada. And then I kind of had the horrors of having to adjust to what my sleeping arrangements would be for the next 3 months. Like I said, she's a bit of a bougie bitch. I like comfort, you know? I like hotels. I like a nice comfy bed. I like my own space. Then I was greeted with what could only be described as the creakiest looking bunk bed I've ever seen in my life. I wouldn't even allow kids to sleep on that bunk bed. It was awful. I'm a tall girl as well, big tall girl. I was too long for the bed. It was like one designed for kids that they expected adults to sleep in. So I like had the bottom part of the bunk, which was like the bunk beds were essentially like the camp counselor beds, and you were positioned in like each corner of the big cabin, and then inside that cabin was like a multitude of single beds that like was there for the little kids, right? And so I squish on in to the bottom layer of the bunk, and it is so cramped. My legs go over the bottom. I'm so squished. It's so hard and stiff and uncomfortable. And like the inside of this wood cabin is filled with like cracks and bugs coming through. You're in like nature. Do you know what I mean? You're in the middle of some Greenland, all the bugs and the mosquitoes and spiders. And I was like, oh, it's not for me. This is not for me. Within that cabin was like your toilets and shower. It was 2 showers shared between, mind you, a large wood cabin that housed at least 30 of us. I'm sorry, those are some poor conditions if you ask me. And then these tiny toilets which were designed for kids. You know, like when you went to primary school and the toilets that they have for kids, the doors are obviously really short because they're designed for kids, right? And they're tiny little toilets. We as grown adults were expected to use those on the daily. And I was so embarrassed. I'm a tall girly. I'm a big, tall girly. I remember going in there once for a wee. I was mortified. This was the door, okay? I was sat down on the toilet. The door is, sorry, for the listeners, by the way, I'm doing this visually on the video, but the door is like, sort of goes up to say where my chin is or my chest. So while I'm sat on the toilet, anyone that walks by who isn't a child can fully see me sat on the toilet. I was like, this is not normal. I feel really uncomfortable. Everyone can now just see me weighing and shitting. Like, I'm so sorry. What do you mean this is my facilities? And there was like flies and bugs inside the shower, and it was a tiny little thin curtain to give you a minuscule amount of privacy. Again, the overwhelm was just beyond at this point. I was already feeling so jet-lagged, so ill, so far away from home, from everything I knew. I was terrified. I felt so alone and so isolated. I felt really out of place with the people there. I just felt like I wasn't clicking or gelling with the type of person that you had to be to work there. Because the thing is, bear in mind, these camps, especially the ones in America, they are quite sports-based. And I was never a big sports-based girly, not really competitive in that sense. I was the creative girly. I was in charge of the Radio Shack, okay? Like the camp radio station. And so everyone else there is like, we're doing the ropes, we're doing the high ropes. I'm the tennis instructor. I'm the kayak girl. And so it was actually really quite hard to connect with these girlies anyway because of how different their interests were. And then you throw on top of that just like the general living conditions. And I was thinking, why have I done this? I don't like this at all. And then I think the thing that tipped me over the edge, which is where I started really questioning how much longer do I need to stay here, was they all forced us to go on a massive hike up this giant mountain in Maine. Couldn't even tell you the name of it. It was a beautiful view at the end of it, but I was so out of my depth. I am not a hiking girly, okay? She's not into physical hiking fitness. It's never been my thing. I like swimming. I do like team sport. I like a bit of badminton. Like, those are my kind of vibes. Hiking, absolutely not. And it was really physically hard. As someone who'd literally never hiked in her life until that point as well, they took us on a really extreme hike. We were like climbing up rocks. It started raining. I slipped on my arse 1,000 times. And I was so embarrassed because I was like right at the back of the pack and I had to basically get one of the guy workers who was sort of like the caretaker guy who accompanied us. He had to like trail behind and help me up like some of the tricky parts because I couldn't do it. And like all the girlies were miles ahead of me. And I just remember feeling so embarrassed at that time and so out of my depth. And I just hated every moment of my life. I was like, no. When I was sat there doing my little interview in university, telling them about what my life was about to become and what I envisioned Camp America to be and what a great experience it was going to be, I did not envision myself close to tears. In fact, I think I did have a little cry on the mountain. I was like, get me home. Just get me home. And so I had a few teary calls with Mum. Shout out Mum. Always there for me. And I remember, again, because you're like jet lagged, you're up at like all hours of the day. And I used to be awake at like probably 4 or 5 in the morning. I just could never sleep. I was so stressed and anxious about everything. I just really wanted to come home. And I was trying so hard, like day after day, to just keep trying, just keep going, just give it time. But there was just something in my gut. I just knew that was not the vibes for me. They tried to introduce me to my little Radio Shack. I am then greeted by a dusty, cobweb-filled box. It was crap. It was the tiniest little wooden box room stuck into the middle of a field, basically. No real equipment. I started stressing about, like, how on earth am I even going to, like, teach kids this? I can't even figure out myself. It was like working from a Sony Mega Drive. It was so old school. I was like, this is not what was advertised. If I'm being honest, I did feel like a bit duped. I was like, this is not what they sold this as. And the issue I also had was that this activity, this radio station that I was supposedly in charge of, I was going to be the only one doing it. Whereas like every other activity that was laid out for the kids and all these other camp counsellors, they all had teams, like they were all in groups of people. And that made me feel even worse because I thought, I don't even have like a colleague essentially to be along my side to help me through this. And that just obviously exacerbated the lonely feelings of thinking, I can't do this. This is too much. I hate the environment. I don't click with any of these girlies. I don't know how I'm meant to manage all of this by myself. I don't know how I'm going to get through like those type of living conditions for that amount of time. Because like realistically, 3 months is a long time. It's a long time to get through. And I honestly had so many tearful calls with my mum, and she was trying, bless her, to just encourage me to keep at it. Like, just give it a chance, give it a chance. And in the end, I was like, I can't do it, mum. Like, I just want to come home. And I think I was probably low-key searching for that approval for her to be like, okay, come home. And eventually we kind of got to that point. But I'd had like conversations with like the bosses of this place, like the camp leaders, whoever they are. And I had some tearful conversations with them where there was like a bit of crisis management where I think they were trying to make me feel a bit better. But truthfully, I don't think they gave a shit. And then I remember going back to them for like a second conversation, and I was kind of indicating to them that I think I'm going to leave. Like, I feel really uncomfortable. And they were just so mean. They were so mean. The minute I basically said, like, I want to leave, it was like, cut out. We don't want you here. If that's not the attitude, if you're going to come with that attitude, you don't fit in here, bitch. And that's really how they made me feel. So that kind of solidified my decision for me there and then. I was like, damn, okay, yeah, this really is not the place for me. And oh man, did I go through a traumatic 3 days after that. These people kicked me out immediately. And it's like, I get it. They're obviously not just going to host me for free until I can go home. But it was so quick. It was really stressful. I was on the phone to my mum and dad. Obviously, at the time, I didn't even like have the money to be able to pay for I had to like change my flight. Shout out my parents for helping me in that moment, because like I truly don't know what I would have done otherwise. We ended up changing the flight, but the earliest flight I could basically get back to the UK from Boston was like in 3 days' time. So I think I like told the camp this, and again, they were like, well, you gotta go make your own arrangements. We'll show you a local motel and we'll take you there, but that's it from us. Bye. And I was like, oh my God. And this is where I don't know how I got through these last 3 to 4 days, but props to me, because that was a scary experience. I can only describe this motel as something out of a horror movie. I'm not joking when I say that. I was like, oh my God, where have they dumped me? I obviously didn't know where I was. I was in some middle of nowhere town in Maine. They took me to this motel. There was a 2-story building in the middle of a petrol station. And there was a Burger King next to it. That's all there was. And it was basically, it's as if, like, imagine in the UK, like, it's just on the side of a motorway. It was next to this huge highway and there was nothing else around. I thought I was in a horror movie. I was like, oh my God, this is really scary. I had limited cash dollars on hand. Thank God I did, because I actually don't know how I would have paid for that otherwise. So I'm in this motel. I pay this woman practically the majority of the cash I have left. I think it was probably something like $200-300 for those 3 nights. I go into this room and it's like a ground floor room. It is so dingy and dark. The tiny little window that existed in the bathroom, because there was no main window, looked out onto the petrol station forecourt where I just heard lorries all day and all night. It was so tragic. And this is when I came to the realization, all of my terrible planning up till this point, clearly it's all been going very well until this point, the one thing I never had in my possession was an adapter, like an American plug adapter. So I was like, crap, because up until that point, I guess I'd been using one of the girls' adapters in the camp. I hadn't even thought about it. I thought, oh, damn. And obviously, I'm all alone. I got to make sure I've got my phone in check, because I got to travel in the next few days and figure out my life. Thank God for this little reception lady. She really came through clutch. She was a sweetheart. She let me borrow her personal plug, like, while she was on shift. I was like, thank you so much. Just so I could get enough charge to figure out my life. I think I actually ordered a Domino's on my phone, because that was the only thing I could figure out how to do in terms of like feeding myself, because I didn't really want to go to Burger King. There was nothing else in the areas, and I think I literally took a walk across to the petrol station shop just so I could get a drink and some snacks. And I think I just cried that night. Like, I was so broken. I was a broken woman. I was like probably talking to my parents or like messaging friends at that time, like, I'm having a really bad time, I'm coming home. This has all gone really wrong. I thought this was going to be the best summer of my life, and now I'm coming home. It was so tragic. I just felt so disappointed in myself. I was really beating myself up for like not achieving that goal, I guess. And I really was so mad. I was like, I've spent all this money and I've come all this way. What a failure. What an absolute failure. And like, obviously, that wasn't the truth. Like, the point is that I tried, and that was an amazing achievement in itself. And the fact that I literally got myself over to America was quite a miracle. But at that time, you just don't see it that way, do you? You're like, I'm a failure. I'm never going to do anything with my life. And I was really ill this time, which did not help. I was so flued up. I was extremely jet lagged still. I felt so unwell. I was like, I just want my mum. Oh, it was so tragic. It was so tragic. So these next 3 days, I'm just on survival mode until I have my flight home. I'm trying to figure out how the hell to get places. The one thing I do know that I have to do in the next day is I've got to try and find some form of adapter, because bless this woman, I couldn't just rely on her. She might not have been on shift the next day or whatever. So the next day I give her back her plug. I order a taxi. Oh, this was an experience, guys and gals. I get a little local taxi with the little money I've got left to pay for it. This taxi rocks up. I go to a local Walmart because I thought, so take me to a local giant supermarket. There'll be restaurants nearby. I can have some lunch or something when I'm out. The guy who drove the taxi was he was giving creepy vibes. I mean, he didn't do anything wrong. He was a nice enough guy, but he was just a kooky character. And I think he was probably perplexed that there was a British person in his taxi, and he probably doesn't get people like that very often in that area. And I was like, yeah, I'm from Wales. Just giving him the standard spiel. And then all of a sudden, he takes a detour. I was like, oh, excuse me, I'm just going to go this way a second, ma'am. He pulls up to a hospital and then stops. And I'm thinking, this is not the Walmart. Why are we stopping here? Oh, I just got to get my friend. Just give me 2 minutes, ma'am. And I was thinking, oh my God, am I going to get murdered? What the fuck is going on here? And then this woman just gets into the taxi, into the front seat. I'm in the back. I don't know who this woman is. They look like friends, I guess. And she's like, hey. I was just like, what's going on? I only ordered a taxi to take me to Walmart. And now I'm pulled outside a random hospital and some woman's got in. I'm pretty sure she had a sling on her arm. I was like, this is really weird and unprofessional. But okay, we're just rolling with it. I'm terrified at this point, thinking, I really hope I make it to Walmart. I don't know where we're going next. He takes me on some drive. He then drops off the woman somewhere, and then we proceed to go forward onto Walmart. Thank God I made it. But that was a sketchy moment, and I was thinking, America is a weird place. America is a weird place. So I go to Walmart. I managed to find an American plug, which will do me for the next 3 days. And then nearby was a Ruby Tuesdays. God, do they even exist anymore? Do you remember Ruby Tuesdays? I think they had some of them in the UK at one point. A little bit like a TGI Fridays type restaurant. So I thought, I'm going to go in here. We'll have a spot of lunch. I hilariously, from within the restaurant, looked outside, because it's obviously a big retail park area, shops, car park. And I see one of the minibuses from the camp. I'm assuming maybe it was a little trip for some of the girls to go get stuff from the shop. I ducked. I remember thinking, oh my God, make me invisible. That's probably all they're talking about in the camp is the weird girl that left all of a sudden. Oh, I was terrified. I was like, oh my God. Thinking maybe they were going to come into the restaurant. Thankfully they didn't. Anyway, I then order a taxi from the Ruby Tuesdays to take me back to the motel, where I proceed to basically spend the next 2 days just locked up in a motel room, eating snacks. My next night of cuisine was the Burger King next door to the petrol station. And then came the journey to go home. That in itself was a real journey. Because this motel was by a highway, a giant motorway. And America is so strange. They are not built for pedestrians in America. So much of it is really just designed for cars. And it was one of those roads where there was no pedestrian crossing. I was staying in my hotel, and 10 yards up the road was another petrol station on the opposite side of the road, which is where I knew this bus was going to be collecting me. It was a bit like a mega bus, like a National Express type bus service. They call it Greyhound in America. And I was going to have to get on that coach for a 5-hour coach ride to Boston, and then go on some metro to Boston Airport, and then fly home. And I'm not joking you, I had to order a taxi from my little motel just to drive me 2 seconds up the hill with my suitcase because I couldn't physically cross the road. Like, it was like you could not have crossed it because it's like a motorway. And I was like, how do all you people get around here? That, well, we got cars, honey. I was like, oh my God. And then the taxi to take me to the coach station was late. The poor lady just received my entire wrath. And I wasn't mean to her, but I was stressed. And I was like, girl, I got to get on that coach. I have to make my flight to the UK. Like, you don't understand the trauma I've been through for the last few days. She was like, honey, don't worry. If the taxi's a little later, I'll drive you up myself. It's like, you're a real one. Thank you, Queen. Like, that woman really came through clutch. She got me my phone charger and she offered to drive me there, bless her. And she was literally just about to grab her keys to take me, and then the taxi turned up. So the taxi comes, drops me off to the coach station. I'm a broken woman at this point. I'm thinking, make it all end. I'm sat on this little bench in a petrol station forecourt waiting for the coach. I think maybe I picked up a snack or two. And then I get a nosebleed. On the bench, everyone's staring at me. I'm so embarrassed. I get nosebleeds quite a lot, have done throughout my life. But this was just not the time and place, okay? I did not need this energy in this very moment. But alas, the universe gifted me with a nosebleed there and then. So then I'm just like, tissue stuffed at my nose, just praying for this bus to turn up at any given time. The bus rocks up. We stop off, and I think a place called Portland. I don't know where the hell I was, but let me tell you, that was the longest bus journey of my life. I was just counting down the hours, panicking that, like, God, I hope there's no delays. I got to make sure I get to the airport. I still got a flight to catch yet. There was like an argument on the bus where someone wouldn't move, and then this American lady, I quote this woman to this day because it does crap me up, and I actually low-key fully respect her for the way she handled this situation, because I'm so like that now. But there was a situation where, like, I guess people were not moving on the bus and they were causing a delay and a queue of people. And she just comes up in like the most true American fashion, like really loud and obnoxious. And she was like, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, let's use our voices. And she's clapping. She's like, let's use our voices. Let's all move. It's just like, yes, queen. Like, obviously in that moment, I was not interested in listening to any of this shit. I was like, just get me to the airport. But in hindsight, what a queen. Big slay girl, because people are imbeciles when they travel. Like, just, yeah, move out the way. People want to crack on. We all want to get where we want to be. So that was quite funny. Finally, 5 hours pass. I rock up to Boston Central bus station or wherever I was. The last leg of the journey, get on a little metro with my suitcase. And I made it to the airport. I then had about 5 hours to kill at the airport. And then the rest was history. She made it home. And I made it home to a very anticlimactic summer where I felt really lost. And then I was in this graduate life where I was like, damn, what do we do now? I'm really quite stuck in life here. And I think probably the biggest insult to this entire thing, which is a bit of a salt in the wounds moment, because I'd planned to spend my entire summer in the Camp America. I was going to be foregoing my graduation ceremony for my degree that was planned for the summer. I was still booked in to go to the alternative one later in the year in December, but it just meant that I wasn't going to be able to do graduation with all my course mates, which I was kind of sad about, but at the time I was like, but, you know, I got to go to America, so pros and cons. And so obviously coming back very early from that trip, and then all along could have just gone to the ceremony, but it was too late to like change the date back. And I just remember being so depressed. It was like a live stream. They did like a live stream of the ceremony, and I just remember being sat at home. I think it was probably the middle of the day. My parents were probably in work, and I was just watching this live stream of my graduation ceremony. It was a real crash down to reality, but you know what? It made me stronger. Character building. And on that note, I have been yapping for a good hour and a half now, so we're going to have to cut this pod down a little bit, but I just thought that might be a funny little story time to end this university episode on, because that's really what encompassed my final chapter, you know? It was like, right, we've done the degree, now we're doing a little gap year moment, we're going to have a fabulous summer, and then it all just came crashing down. So, good times, good memes. But you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way because, like I said, it's so character building. It's such a life experience and a life lesson. And I guess it just really taught me that, like, you know what? You got to think about what you do enjoy in this life and what you don't. And if you know something's not for you, then don't continue to do it if it doesn't make you happy. But also, it was kind of a lesson in, like, at least try. Always try. And if you fail, that doesn't matter. Try and try again, as they say. As a sort of summary of thoughts about just university life as a whole, I will say I'm glad I went to university. It was a real roller coaster of a journey for me. And there's times where I obviously think, I could have got on in life without a degree, truthfully, but I never would have had all of those life experiences if I never went. And for that, I'm grateful. I think it'll be interesting to hear other people's opinions on university, that entire path. Is it even like a popular option anymore? Like, I don't really have anyone in my life that's of school age and is going into that part of their world. I don't really know what university student numbers are like anymore, especially since the pandemic, because everything's like online learning now. So I wonder if the traditional uni campus experience is even the same anymore. If you're someone that's listening and you're about to embark on a university journey, let me know in the comments, like, what are you feeling? Are you apprehensive? Are you going to a traditional campus? Are you learning online? And if you did go to university and perhaps you're a graduate, or it's been a good few years since you went to university, like, how did you find your experience? I would love to hear some stories of other people's times at university. I'd be curious to know, like, what the education system looks like these days for high schools, because obviously I'm very far removed from it. But anyway, all that to say, university is a challenge, but it's also an adventure. So if you're going to university, just know that you're not alone in any of these experiences. It's a scary time, it's overwhelming, it's exciting, and it can be everything and more. And if it's not for you, then it's not for you, and that's okay. So anyway, thanks very much for joining me for another week of just yip yip yap in Yap City. Miss Mayor of Yap City over here, Megan Wigz, proud graduate. I've had a fun time just recalling memories, story times, experiences. And hey, the full circle moment is that she's using that radio degree. She's using the creativity now to smash this podcast. So, swings and roundabouts, Anyway, thank you again for joining me. I look forward to catching in with you on the next episode. Make sure to follow any of my social pages. I've got Instagram, TikTok, and I think I'll have Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that set up. You can follow my Linktree, keep up with any updates of what's going on. And yeah, drop us a follow. Interact with me in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And I will catch you on the next one. Bye!